Welcome back to the Backyard Basketball Podcast, presented by the Ordinary Podcasting Network. I'm Braden Dollar-Coltman. I'm here with my good pal, Christian Steck. What's going on, Chris?
Yo. How's it going, buddy?
Good, man. We are going to be diving more into this Ben Simmons fiasco. It's soon to be a moot point, but until then, we are going to dive deeper and deeper into what the future holds for our buddy Ben Simmons. We're going to be playing a few other games here, diving into what could have been in the past for the NBA with trades and much more. So let's get going. All right, Chris. Ben Simmons is still a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. At this point, does he still exist within that organization, or is the writing already on the wall? Is he out? Is it a matter of time? My question to you is, will he be traded before or after the season begins?
I thought you were going to ask me if Ben Simmons just exists. Because that is a whole point in question, really altogether. The Ben Simmons. Well, you can tell we're getting to the quiet point of the offseason when this is really all there is to talk about. Will he get traded before or after the season is the question that you asked me. See, the only news that I've been hearing like recently, so there was conversation with Sacramento, and from what I was reading and understanding, there's a writer out in Sacramento, Sam Amick is his name. He works for the Athletic, and he specializes with the Sacramento Kings. And he was talking about that there was conversations, recently between Sacramento and Ben Simmons, and Sacramento is extremely reluctant to give up either Fox or Halliburton. And
do you blame him?
Well, no. I mean, obviously, Fox, he's going to be 23 this upcoming season. He's been getting better and better every year. He might get better. He's obviously going to continue to get better. What am I saying? He's got a lot of potential. And Halliburton, of course, has had a great start to his career as well, too, has a lot of potential. My initial take would have been, hey, why don't you just trade and get Buddy Hield and one of those two guys straight up for Ben Simmons? That seems like a pretty fair trade. Probably works out in terms of cash and money, salaries. And it's a good opportunity for Sacramento to have potential huge upside and for Philly to have Buddy Hield and then another asset that, can contribute right now for their championship aspirations. But like the fact
they turned
that
it down, they said, no way, Jose.
They're not going to give up either of those two guys, at least not at this moment, which just kind of reinforces this idea in my mind that Ben Simmons literally has nowhere to go before the season starts. The season's going to start. He's going to training camp. It's going to be ugly. Clutch Sports can make a big stink about it. But you know what? I don't think Daryl Morey minds when things get a little ugly, to be quite frank.
Well, he held out for a while on that James Harden deal. James Harden was hanging out in Houston strip clubs and gaining weight, and it didn't seem to matter. He got traded 2-3 weeks into the season.
He did, but I don't think Daryl Morey was there at that point.
Oh, he was gone. So that was an aftermath, right? That was aftermath after Russell got traded, and they had a new coaching staff, new GM. That's right.
Totally. But you know what? I mean, all of that being said, even the instincts of Daryl leaving towards the end of that tenure in Houston and knowing what the writing was on the wall, I think it was a situation. I don't even know if he mutually decided to leave or if he was fired. I can't remember off the top of my head, but regardless, he's the type of individual, and especially the way that he's placating the situation, like anybody that you're working in any form of business and you're having these kind of conversations, you have pretty clear transparency within yourself, knowing that what you're offering and what you're willing to take, the logistics of that and how significant, if there's going to be movement or not. So you can perform and play being obstinate, putting a way higher bar and expectation, given the situation that you're building a narrative now that knowing going into the season is more than likely going to work in your favor, even if there's discontent within the organization of Philadelphia. And it is unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is going to create probably, a big rift on multiple levels. There isn't a worse fan base for get the hell out of here, I don't want to see you again, than probably Philadelphia. So that adds another wrinkle to the whole dynamic of it. But Daryl knows exactly what he's doing. And again, this is a situation that I said going into the 2022 season, free agency is pretty sparse. And I think the consensus seems to be, I would imagine from Sacramento's perspective, if they don't want to move, like in an ideal situation, and this is just my opinion on this, you take Ben Simmons and you put him in the Draymond Green role. And if he's willing to abide by whatever things that he can and can't do within that role and be a contributor as a teammate on that team, I think the ceiling is limitless. Like I think his potential for what he can do impacting the game, maybe not himself individually as a player, but how he impacts the game for a team could be substantially significant. But the reluctancy is telling me that the news that we're getting of Ben Simmons this last year, how he performed, how he showcased himself, there's a lot of trepidation for people really wanting to commit. They're wanting, to look at this situation and see, where is it going to be more propitious? Where is there going to be a better chance of success? And the reality likelihood of that situation is they want to see, does the work that hopefully Ben Simmons, quote unquote, has put in the offseason going to bear any fruit? Let's go into the season. Let's see how Ben Simmons performs. Let's see how our three young studs, if you're Sacramento, how they all mesh together. And if there's an opportunity within the season, that's when we're going to act. I think there's a lot of teams that are thinking with this frame of mind.
But what year are we in on Ben Simmons? This is his 5th or 6th in the league?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
4
Maybe he's going into his 6th. You know what? I'll pull that up right now.
Okay, so here's the thing though with Ben Simmons is that every offseason he puts in work and shows it off on Instagram as this is, I heard somebody saying he's looking like Reggie Miller. He's dropping threes and he's on fire in the gym, but then he shows up in the season and it's like, where is that? Where is that Ben Simmons that we see on Instagram?
Totally, man. He's 25 years old. He was drafted in 2016. Okay. So this would be his 6th year.
Okay. So again, when is Ben Simmons going to show up and be that dominant force? Now, does he have to have a shot to be that dominant force? Or can he be this defender, this elite defender that we all know he can be, and that be enough?
See, there's a narrative that was driven when Ben Simmons first came in the league. Everybody really sold this guy super high, even though like his time at LSU, that should have been an observation at the time. He had an injured no, that was afterwards. Yeah. So he was with LSU. He played one season for them. He was the consensus All-American, all this kind of stuff, but like he only played for half the season with LSU. And then he goes into the league and everybody's putting this high expectation. There's this narrative forming around him. He gets involved with the Kardashians. Life is so great. We're living this like grand, time. And there's this like absence that I just perceive of Ben Simmons for lack of confidence. And you can work as hard as you can in an off season when the spotlight isn't on you, but when the spotlight is the brightest and you decide to shy away from the moment, that is a really big hurdle. That's a mental obstacle. And there's not necessarily work that you're going to do into the gym to overcome that. You can build a certain level of confidence, but at the end of the day, it's something that really comes with inside yourself. And I don't think there's any kind of timetable that a person can put to define what you need to do out there in this world to find that confidence within yourself. I mean, people go a lifetime before they find any, perspective that gives them that elevated level of confidence wherever they can step into their own. And is that going to happen while Ben Simmons is in the league? Is that going to happen to the extent that we're going to live up to this expectation of Ben Simmons? Or are you right? Maybe Ben Simmons is just going to be this great defensive player who's an impact player, but necessarily isn't sold out as the, consensus number 1 overall pick in the 2016 draft.
Okay, so let's dig in a little bit more on his representation. He's represented by Clutch Sports
Yeah.
Management. Rich Paul is his guy. He's the fourth highest paid athlete on Rich Paul's roster. What's the deal there? Why is there contention? Why is Rich Paul at the forefront of this saga, if you will? And why is it him again? Why is it Rich again?
Well, this could also bring light to a deeper conversation if one wanted to get into. And again, it's not necessarily any information that I've read or seen. This is just my perception. This is my life experience looking at what's happening in the league right now, looking what's happening with Clutch Sports right now, and coming up with some sort of conclusion. And my conclusion, Rich Paul and Clutch Sports, their number one MO is to bring people to LeBron James to make him be the most successful player that he can be. So if you can bring people on his team, if you can support LeBron James in any way while he's in the league, then good on you. You can come back, be an impact player. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Let's be successful. For Rich Paul and whatever his own prerogatives, whatever his own initiatives are, that's good and great. But it always feels like that this club, this agency within the whole conglomerate of the NBA, there's always been a lot of narratives that have been strewn about Clutch Sports strong arming the league or strong arming a team or strong arming, the front office. And that kind of behavior makes me think is that you're really throwing your weight around, you're throwing your influence around. You're throwing your fame, your success, whatever it is, around to garner some level of power, to garner some level of leverage, and you're gonna. I don't know. My attitude is be getting a little bit saltier with Clutch Sports. When that Nerlens Noel news report came out where he was suing Clutch Sports because Clutch didn't necessarily do their due diligence to support this man, earlier on in his NBA career. That's a red flag to me, because that means is you're prioritizing and focusing, which probably a lot of these agencies do in the first place. The reality is when you're in the league, there's a totem pole to it, and that certain guys are going to get preferential treatment over others. It's always been a point of dialogue. If you look at, in Michael Jordan's time or decades before that, there were always conversations and arguments of lesser known players talking about this preferential treatment. That's always happened within the league or within teams or what have you. And you know what? That's just a part of life. But the way that Clutch Sports is acting in response and biases to the league itself and thinking that they can strong arm all these situations, it's a pendulum thing. And my attitude is that this is going to swing back and it's going to bite you in the ass at some point. And I don't know if maybe this is going to be a classic situation with Ben Simmons that we're going to see it bear fruit. Like that one example I showed you recently, we were talking about this and listening to it. And I heard this on the Bill Simmons podcast and was talking about this one instance with the Ben Simmons discourse that's happening in Philadelphia, is that this is a lose-lose situation. There is really no avenue that you can look here on the unfortunate side of how this is all played out, how Simmons has showed himself on the stage and how everything's been happening behind the scenes, and the options that are available to Philadelphia, that there are extreme limitations going into this season about what individual, what team, what agency can do to get a quote unquote win. And this might be a bit of a black mark that's added with the Nerlens Noel thing, but this might even be on a brighter showing of this Ben Simmons drama essentially that's happening if Clutch Sports can't find some sort of solution. If they're going to be obstinate, if Ben Simmons is going to be obstinate, if Daryl Morey is going to be obstinate, no one's really winning here. If anything, it's probably going to be, Philadelphia is going to get something at the end of the day. Daryl Morey is going to get something at the end of the day. And we really won't know if it's going to be for the best right off, the face value. It's going to look like a lose-lose, but maybe, 3, 4, 5 years down the road where we see Simmons have success, maybe flourish in the league. Maybe he even goes to a different agency at that point, which I would honestly be in support of, because I don't think the way that this has been playing out, that Clutch Sports and again the narrative that the media and so many different these news sources are pointing towards Ben Simmons right now. They've really put him in the ground.
Well,
so he's got no trade.
That's the issue. That is the issue, because before Ben Simmons was going to be traded, he had a bad offseason. He made some boneheaded moves in the playoffs, and all signs were looking at, let's come back stronger. Let's go again. It seems like the media conglomerate is always to blame here when these things kind of come about. James Harden, look back, Vince Carter, like the media blows it way out of proportion. They start throwing out mock trades, and then all of a sudden this guy gets moved. So to suggest that this isn't going to happen is it's crazy, and it's just a matter of time, I think.
And it creates drama, and unfortunately that drama has an impact on multiple different aspects of the whole situation. And I think that, it'll be interesting to see how, again, like I said, Clutch Sports navigates this, because the drama that's associated with Ben Simmons, maybe they're looking at Ben Simmons in more of a negative light. Maybe Clutch Sports is. Maybe they're like, this player isn't what we thought he is, LeBron. Maybe we should drop this guy. Maybe he isn't a stud. And it's unfortunate, but the reality is this might be the best thing. What is happening right now, this situation, even going into the season, if it looks really ugly, this might be the best thing to ever happen for Ben Simmons when we look back on it in hindsight.
Well, the saga continues. The drama is never ending. And hopefully the next time we chat, he will be a member of
no team. He's going to be with Philadelphia. He's going to be with Philadelphia. The season's going to start, and we're going to keep talking about this Ben Simmons thing up until the trade deadline.
Let's stop. Well, we'll probably talk about it again next week, but for now, let's leave it there.
All right.
Okay, so we mentioned Ben Simmons in the last segment, and how he's due for movement. Somebody else on the move, getting acquainted with his new team. Kyle Kuzma, who was supposed to be, this great young asset. I mean, he still kind of is, but he hasn't really made his mark yet. He's won a championship on the tailcoats of Sir LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and now he's forging his way with Washington. And then today, apparently news came out that there was already a deal in place for him to be moved to Sacramento in the Buddy Hield deal. Is this news? Is this necessary to talk about? What do you make of Kyle Kuzma talking about Sacramento as his the place he was supposed to go to?
Well, I think this is some news, because that Sacramento deal was a done deal. From my understanding, as it was involving Buddy Hield. That's who the Lakers were going to get. And it probably would have involved, players Kuzma and say Montrezl Harrell. It wouldn't have been a big of a trade that ended up happening for Russell Westbrook, but that was a done deal. That was happening overnight. Everybody was in agreement that was going to happen. So I find it strikingly curious how quickly then the Westbrook deal came into play. And, necessarily, I'm sure LeBron James must have been a huge proprietor in that and conversations and getting the ball moving on that end. Also, what to discern away from Buddy Hield to go for Russell Westbrook. I get he's got higher upside and a talented player in many ways. But again, it's one of those conversations we had about Russell Westbrook on that team and what those players do together and the lack of, spacing and shooting and those advantages that Buddy Hield would have brought to the table. So it kind of makes you question again, too, about the Lakers' decision making. And obviously, is it going to bear fruit, later on in the season? I guess we'll find out. But I don't know, from Kuzma's perspective, I felt like he gave a deep level of insight saying that, this was a done deal. And he was making jokes about, he was just like 45-minute drive for flight to Napa and he was okay being in Sacramento. And then he also brought up the fact he was going to go to Washington. It was actually going to be a better situation for him.
Right. Good job. That's
I hear there's a lot of museums in Washington. I don't think that's really his thing. So
a lot of history.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Goran Dragic saying, "Well, Toronto's not really the place I want to be." It's like, well, hold on a second there. you better start pleasing your fans because they're gonna jump ship on you pretty quickly.
Exactly. And even though we have this player empowerment movement, there's still limitations in that. You got to understand what you're in, where you are, and what you're doing. So, I don't know. I think like Kuzma on Washington with all those players and assets, like it's going to be a good opportunity for him. And who knows what happens with Bradley Beal. I think, as just a segue to speak about Washington, I think the moves that they made, what they got in return for Westbrook and trying to, make Bradley Beal happy, they gave it a valiant effort. It's commendable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They'll probably be a playoff team. They're going to be competitive. They're not necessarily going to win really many playoff games, but yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a cool level of insight. Like this stuff happens in the league right now. I mean, it's happened for a long time, but especially these days, it's so quick how things can turn.
It's so quick definitely how much player turnover there is, how many moving parts. But like you just said, this has been happening for a while now. And just for fun, I want to throw a few trades that were in the works, that were in place, that never went down. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So the first one, Kyrie Irving. Can you guess where he was potentially going to be moving in 2017? So this would have been after his Boston day, when that was coming to an end, just before he went to. Oh, no. This would be just before he headed to Boston. So he was with Cleveland. He has won, and there was a deal in place to move him in the offseason 2017.
Wow, this was before Boston came in.
That's right.
I'm going to say he was going to be traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves because I just hate Kyrie Irving. So
yeah. So incorrect. He was going to be traded. I'm not going to tell you what team, but I'm going to tell you who was in the deal. Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Middleton, and a future first-round pick.
Get out to go to Milwaukee.
Milwaukee had offered this package back in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would have been really interesting, actually, to see those two play
Bucks
together.
Yeah.
I mean, Middleton, I feel like is such an indelible piece to that team that they probably, even this past year, if they had Kyrie Irving, I don't think would have still up to this point won a championship. But I don't know. I mean, if you had Middleton, Giannis, and Kyrie on that team, holy crow. That would have been sick.
All right. I'm going to throw another one.
All right. Let's do it.
Okay.
I got this one.
I got
this one.
Okay. So we're talking 2012.
Oh, boy.
And this was a deal that was going to include Klay Thompson.
Wow. Oh, for Kevin Love.
No. Another star at the time. And it was in the same conference. OKC was looking to free up their finances by parting ways with this promising young guard.
What year was this? 2012?
2012.
James Harden.
That's right.
Yeah, because he went that year, didn't he?
Can you imagine Stephen Harden backcourt? I mean, Stephen Clay is a dynasty, but Stephen Harden. And then what down there? I mean, who knows what would have happened after that? But who knows? KD shows up. Steph,
Harden and KD.
That would have been fun.
That would have been pretty sick, dude.
Who knows? It's all hypotheticals. Who knows what would have happened? Okay, I'm going to jump to another one. 2002.
Oh, boy.
So if you can remember 2002, the Toronto Raptors and Vince Carter, like we just mentioned, were on the rocks with one another. So this was a deal to the Dallas Mavericks. And the Dallas Mavericks were going to offer up 2 players for Vince Carter and Antonio Davis. But the GM said no because they were unwilling to part way with Carter for 2 players with the time seemed unproven. Can you guess who these unproven players were?
These players were unproven at the time. Did they go on to be pretty successful, Chris?
I'd say they were pretty proven.
Flip. What's Jason Terry? Was he one?
No, not quite.
Kidd was on the Nets at that time.
That's right.
Uh,
Who was Kidd's protege?
Steve Nash.
That's right. And
Oh man.
come on.
Who was on the Mavs at that time?
Who's one of the greatest Mavs of all time?
I can't think of it.
The big Dirk, man.
The big Dirk and Nash.
Dirk and Nash.
Vince Carter. Are you kidding me?
And Antonio Davis.
Are you kidding me? What?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Imagine if Toronto had those guys.
Bro, they would have won a chip a long time ago.
Oh man. That's unreal. Unreal. And they were unproven. Well, I guess it's pretty young in their respective careers. And when did Steve Nash leave and he went to Phoenix? Was that 2004?
I couldn't tell you the exact date. I know there was I think it was, well, because Kidd and Nash weren't there together, were they? Oh, our NBA history buffs are going to be upset right now.
I know. We apologize.
It's the Ardbeg. I can't even.
It is. A little segue. A cheers to Ardbeg Ugadale, our unofficial sponsor for amazing Scotch to success.
Okay, I'm going to throw one last one at you. Back in 2007.
This. Okay.
Boston formed a super team.
Yep.
Okay. It took the title in 2008, but the offseason before that, there was a deal in place for Kevin Garnett to go to a team in the West.
Oh man. So he was on the T-Wolves and he would have went to another team on the West.
That's right.
Was it Portland?
Nope. A little further south.
Oh man.
This would have been a big move because these would have been two players that would team up that would have been pretty unstoppable.
I'll
give you a hint. They played them in the finals. Boston.
No way. Really? He was going to go play with Kobe?
Mm-hmm.
What?
So there was a deal in place for Andrew Bynum and Lamar Odom. I'm sure there's some picks involved as well, but yeah, man, KG and Kobe, that would have been pretty fun.
Minnesota must have said no.
Yeah, that's probably not enough or something.
Yeah, not enough for those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
Man, but I wonder what Bynum's doing these days.
Who knows, man?
That guy, he came up and came down so fast, like his career. I mean,
he was an interesting guy because he was actually pretty similar to Odom in that he could carry the ball. He was a huge guy, but he could bring the ball up the court. Yeah. Okay, well, let's leave that there. Okay, so last week there were rumblings that Dennis Rodman's 48 Hours in Vegas is going to be turned into a feature film. His infamous vacation to Las Vegas during the Bulls 97-98 run. And this is a story we kind of found out more about through the Last Dance Netflix series. There are so many more stories that we haven't heard yet. Not just from Michael Jordan or from Dennis Rodman and that team, but from many others. We got to see who was it, Draymond and KD sit down together in that interview. Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to know from you, what two players would you want an interview from? My initial thinking here in this context was I want to see Rodman and Kim Jong-un sit down together, and I want to see that conversation take place. I want to see how this relationship is.
It'd be goofy, man.
It'd be super goofy. It would be. It'd be a blast. But who would you want to see sit down, talking basketball, talking latter days?
That's a really good question. And it was cool too. We also were fortunate enough to see Kobe and Shaq have that moment together too.
It's pretty special for sure.
Where they got to kind of rekindle some of the past. I would say what would be some interesting players this year? Well, I mean, for my Boston Celtics, I would love to get a bit more clarity, just myself, between Ray Allen and it'd be Ray Allen on one side, and then it would be like Pierce, Rondo, and Garnett on the other side. Being like, what the fuck, dude?
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see how that went sour. That one would be good. I would love to. Yeah, what would be?
What about like Greg Pop and someone?
Greg, yeah. Oh man,
and like Phil Jackson.
That would be really cool. Or have because we also watched the Malice in the Palace.
That's right. That's
doc
right.
recently as well too, which was really good. And I remember there was a moment in the video collection for that film of Ron Artest and Pat Riley going at it, just jawing at each other. So I think that would also, because I don't think Pat Riley thinks too highly of that guy, I think that would also be an interesting conversation. You know what actually would be kind of cool, if anything, would to hear some of the players that played in the NBA speak with their college coaches, the ones that are still kicking around.
Definitely. That'd be awesome.
Like Calipari interviewing some guys, or Mike
Krzyzewski.
Yeah, Krzyzewski. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the Tar Heels.
He just retired. Roy Williams.
Roy Williams. Because I believe didn't he coach or maybe that was a little bit before. I can't remember if Roy Williams.
Who's that? Vince or MJ?
Michael.
No, MJ was a bit before Roy's time, I think. He might have been an assistant, actually.
Yeah, he was for 18 seasons with the Tar Heels.
Oh man.
Yeah, he started in 0405. Yeah, that's never mind. Yeah, way before. But I think that would be, just to hear guys like, they have had in the NBA, but right from like the start when they were like really raw, and have those conversations with those coaches, and those coaches distilling to see potential in these guys, because all these guys didn't necessarily have those pieces put together. Yep. I think those would be really cool conversations. Anybody else for you that strikes your mind?
Definitely the coaches. Like I want to hear, I want to hear some of those stories about, and maybe between some of the players, like like Phil Jackson with some of those. I mean, we got a little bit of that in The Last Dance with Steve Kerr, but Steve Kerr with Curry would be pretty special. Just to hear some of that. I was listening to the Ringer podcast talk about just the Warriors and how Kerr like came in to an already dominant team. Like this was an already championship winning team. Just to hear like what that experience would have been from his side would be pretty special.
That'd be really good. You know what else? Actually, I just off the top of my head in terms of players would be really sweet is to have Isaiah Thomas on one side, and then have the 1992 Dream Team on the other side. The whole.
What about just Isaiah Thomas and MJ?
That would be really intense. Or Isaiah Thomas
but it would be riveting.
Magic. Yeah, man. Yeah, actually, MJ and Isaiah would be really interesting, because that would bring to light, I feel like, conversation about, competitiveness and the right way of going about, playing basketball. I feel like that was the biggest rift that MJ had. In terms of Isaiah Thomas, was that
said he was dirty, but everybody says MJ was a bully, and MJ was, he was hard and he was mean, and there's this ferocity when it comes to competition that came out in both of those guys. They were both very dominant players in their own on their own team. They were leaders in that capacity. It would be really, it would be really, really cool to hear them talk about the experience, especially playing each other and what that meant. Because they loathed each other. And I'm sure they still feel a certain way about each other.
Oh, you could tell it in the doc. There was still a lot of animosity.
Yeah.
So, but
sweet, man.
Yeah, dude. One last thing I want to bring up too that I just remembered last week. That would be worth talking about was also LaMarcus Aldridge. What amazing news to hear that he re-signed with Brooklyn, and he's he's coming back. I hope his health is in good standing. I remember, when he left, he had an irregular heartbeat. Like, that was pretty scary.
Yep.
So, if he comes back and he's a contributor, like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, yes. First and foremost, yes. Glad he's healthy. Second, a contributor.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
the poor guy's like, he hasn't played basketball for half a year. He's just replaced DeAndre Jordan, whose role on the team was very minimal.
You mean like non-existent?
Exactly. So contributor.
Well, he's probably going to do better.
It would be great to see him put some buckets and get some rebounds for that team, but that team doesn't need a lot of help, and maybe that's why they brought him back. They also signed Paul Millsap, who's also kind of on the latter end of his productivity. This is always the time where those big guys just start moving around. It's like they just bounce back and forth from team to team. And by team to team, I mean LA and Brooklyn.
They're chasing rings, right? That's what they're doing.
That's right. Marc Gasol doesn't have a place anymore. LaMarcus Aldridge is now in Brooklyn. DeAndre Jordan's in LA. There was another fella. It's always those older 7-foot guys that just like, oh, come on, let me sit on your bench. I'll bring some leadership, and when you guys are losing, I'll make it fun for the fans. Well, good for Lamar. Yes, good for LaMarcus Aldridge. Good for all those big guys just wanting to win a chip. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Chris, so much. What a great episode. This was the Backyard Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the Ordinary Podcasting Network. You can follow us on Instagram and find this podcast anywhere you stream your podcasts. Until next week,
we're going to have a lot more news. It's going to be great. NBA season's right around the corner. Let's go!